Repeated felonies in our city, the federal government should do its job and have that individual deported from our city. You break the law, it would be investigated, and it would be handled by our criminal justice system.
Robbery ring, I should say. Now, I did check in with police this morning who tell me they have arrest warrants.
A migrant robbery ring plaguing New York with suspects getting away on scooter.
Eric Adams said would actually doom the city at some point. That's probably the most dismal thing he's ever had to say about this.
Attempted robbery in Brooklyn. In a shocking incident on Tuesday, a migrant has been taken into custody for allegedly assaulting a 50-year-old man with a rock and attempting to steal his wallet on a Brooklyn street. According to sources within the police and law enforcement agencies, officers from the New York Police Department swiftly responded to the situation in Greenpoint around 2:35 p.m. The suspect, identified as 26-year-old Jason Sanchez, reportedly struck the victim in the head with a rock before attempting to steal his wallet.
Repeated felonies in our city, the federal government should do its job and have that individual deported from our city.
We're oversaturated, and in every borough that doesn't have the same amount of shelters as we have.
Well, questions being raised tonight about a new pilot program that'll give migrant families a reloadable prepaid credit card to buy food.
You break the law, it would be investigated, and it would be handled by our criminal justice system.
Sources indicate that Sanchez is a Guatemalan migrant. Although the victims sustained cuts on their face, they declined medical assistance at the scene. The New York Police Department confirmed that Sanchez was taken into custody without incident. He now faces charges of attempted robbery, assault, and criminal possession of a weapon. Sanchez's last known residence is reported to be 146 Clay Street, a homeless shelter in close proximity to the incident location. This incident comes amid heightened concerns about migrant-related crimes in the city. Just earlier this week, Mayor Eric Adams called for improved collaboration between the New York Police Department and Immigration and Customs Enforcement following the latest alleged incident involving a migrant. Mayor Adams suggested that the city may need to contact the federal agency regarding migrants accused of significant crimes. However, modifying existing laws would be required, a move that necessitates action from the city council.
People that live right here in our country, people with families and children, and they need that help.
Since arriving in the city, many asylum seekers are picking up various day jobs in order to make ends meet.
Robbery ring, I should say. Now, I did check in with police this morning who tell me they have arrest warrants.
New York City kids living in poverty, and yet they're spending tens of millions on prepaid debit cards.
City status after migrant crime wave. As a result of a recent string of crimes that reportedly included migrants in Gotham, New York City Mayor Eric Adams made a demand on Tuesday for a reform in the sanctuary policy that the city now has in place. This policy significantly restricts communication between federal investigators and the city. According to Hisner, he is one of the opinion that the authorities of the city should work more closely with the United States Immigration and Customs Enforcement Bureau in order to potentially deport migrants who are suspected of committing serious crimes in the Big Apple. During a press conference, Adams, a Democrat, stated, "I want to go back to the standards of the previous mayors who I believe subscribe to my belief that people are suspected of committing serious crimes in the city should be held accountable." Adams is hoping to return to the standards that were in place under the prior mayors. Adams went on to say, "I believe that people living in New York have a right to be safe." Adams retorted they didn't give due process to the person that they shot, punched, or slayed in response to a reporter's inquiry regarding the migrants' rights to due process. Basically, this is a debate based on philosophical principles.
A migrant robbery ring plaguing New York with suspects getting away on scooter.
Some migrant families will soon be given prepaid credit cards to buy food and baby supplies.
Eric Adams said would actually doom the city at some point. That's probably the most dismal thing he's ever had to say about this.
Illegal migrants or migrants that's coming into the country and giving out this free money. What about the people that live here?
Adams continued by saying they might have the right to pursue due process, but we ought to be communicating with ICE. And since the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency is the one that decides whether or not to deport someone, then they should. The Immigration and Customs Enforcement utilizes its own due process procedures in accordance with federal law to evaluate whether or not a migrant should be deported. In addition, officials stated that Adams was referring to migrants who are accused of committing serious felonies or who have committed several offenses. According to Lisa Zornberg, General Counsel for Local Hall, a previous executive order from 1989 made it quite clear that officials were not permitted to send the immigration status of a person who sought local services or was the victim of a crime to federal authorities. During the press conference, Zornberg stated that a rule that was passed in 2014 prevented the city from fulfilling ICE detainers if an individual is accused of committing a criminal or even convicted of a crime, unless certain conditions were met. After that, in 2017, changes were made to the policy. There is a bar, and the operation of those two laws essentially place strong limitations on the city's ability to cooperate or to provide even just notification to federal authorities, she said. There is still a bar. She stated that the policies are for the people who serve on the city council to re-examine, which the new office of New York City Council Speaker Adrian Adams made it quite clear will not take place. A representative for Speaker Adams directed the post to statements made by the executive leader of the council on February 8th, in which she stated that there were no intentions to reconsider sanctuary legislation.
The city is caring for nearly 60,000 migrants right now. Let's face it, that number is not expected to get smaller.
The mayor's office says the city is partnering with Mobility Capital Finance to launch a more cost-effective program.
I think it was more like 4,000 people that we got last week, which is kind of insane when you think about what these numbers are.
In every zip code, they have to come up and meet us first.
Definitely.
Before they even start looking at you.
An email from a spokesman stated that her response has not changed on any level. Over the past few weeks, immigrants in New York City have been charged with a number of crimes, including the attack on 2 police officers in Times Square, a major robbery ring including mopeds, and a slaying that resulted in the injury of a tourist. As a result of the arrest of migrant Jose Antonio Ibarra in connection with the slay of Georgia College student Laken Riley earlier this month, the policy has also been subject to criticism. Ibarra, who has entered the country illegally, was taken into custody in Queens in the previous year for allegedly riding a scooter with a youngster who was not wearing a helmet or utilizing the proper child restraints. Officials stated that he was charged with a felony and freed before the Immigration and Customs Enforcement could issue a detainer. He then traveled to Georgia. Adams made a statement on Tuesday that a limited number of migrants should not be let to hide under the restrictions that are now in place. I believe that New Yorkers should be safe, and the migrants and asylum seekers who are doing the right thing should not be caught up with those who are not doing the right thing, he said. What I believe is that New Yorkers should be safe.
Governor Hochul discussed New York's migrant crisis with President Biden yesterday in a conversation she called very productive.
People may have a different cultural taste for certain foods.
You understand that we're in the middle of a surge right now. Let me start with the numbers. Last week, I think, my notes say 3,800.
Shelter altercation. An increase in the number of crimes committed by migrants has been reported by the New York Police Department. A fight that took place between law enforcement and migrants was seen on camera on Thursday, February 15th, at the largest migrant shelter in the city, which is located in Randall's Island. Migrants can be seen throwing huge objects at law enforcement authorities in the footage that was taken from within the shelter and shared on social media. After a few seconds, there is a migrant lying on the ground, surrounded by law enforcement police. After being forced to leave because the shelter said he wasn't permitted to be there, the migrant male allegedly fought with a security guard and resisted arrest, according to the police. Over the course of several minutes, the struggle to place the individual under arrest continued. Both his arms and legs were used by the officers to carry him out. Additional objects were thrown at the officers before they made a mad dash for the exits. It has been reported by individuals who talked with the New York Post that the migrant was taken into custody, but the prosecution chose not to proceed with the case. At the shelter on Randall's Island, this is not an unusual incident that has occurred. In addition, there have been a number of additional conflicts that have resulted in the permanence of the police presence at the institution. A migrant has been knifed to end by another migrant while they were waiting in line for food since the beginning of the year 2024. In the 2 weeks that followed, a security guard was knifed in the neck but managed to survive the attack. As a result of the event, 18 migrants were taken into custody. A migrant was taken into custody after he fought with law enforcement officers while under the influence of alcohol, causing one of the officers to be taken to the hospital with injuries. Despite the fact that these are some of the instances that have taken place on the island, another brawl that was caught on camera in Times Square got national notice as migrants attacked officers in the streets. The New York City Mayor Eric Adams has stated that the majority of migrants are not contributing to the problem, despite the fact that the police are warning of an increase in crime due to migrants.
We can only provide nutrition, food for people.
And while there is apparently progress in terms of Congress's plan to hatch out a border deal.
And shared our concerns, both the governor was also communicated with him. If they were running the city right now, we'd be in a whole lot of trouble.
According to Adams, the vast majority of migrants who are currently in our care arrived in our city with the intention of pursuing the American dream and enjoying a better life. The small number of individuals who through their criminal actions disrupt that journey for the remaining migrants in our care will be subject to enforcement to the fullest extent of the law. That's all for this video, folks. See you next time.